You know, someone who's going to get into the CFL in a couple of years is going to ask me in about 5 years, hey, Dalts, when you grew up, who was your favorite and who was the best Canadian running back that you watch? And because my wife says I still have yet to grow up, that era is probably from when I first started watching the CFL in age 7 to 5 minutes ago, and the answers could vary from Sean Millington, Jerome Messam, Andrew Harris, Jon Cornish, and there could be a couple more. Done. I have yet to actually ask the previous generation from years past about who they had as the favorite running back, and if I did, their names would probably be the likes of Jerry James, Neil Lumsden, Normie Kwong, and Johnny Bright. No, not Johnny Bright. If you Google best Canadian running backs, Johnny Bright actually comes up first, but he's American, so don't believe anything Google tells you. Don't. Why is this relevant? Well, because there is a resurgence of the Canadian running back position in the CFL, and when there's a resurgence, there's usually a pioneer, and for pioneers, you look no further than the Calgary Stampeders. Hi, my name is Robert Dalton. On today's CFL Trade Tree, we're going to be looking at how the Calgary Stampeders maintain that Canadian running back dominance in the post-Jon Cornish era.
Outside, Toronto Mayo in pursuit, and hit, ball drops, and the Calgary Stampeders, in the year of the horse, are the Grey Cup champions.
So 2014, the Calgary Stampeders, fast forward to November, they won the Grey Cup. They're sitting there, Bo Levi Mitchell's got his first championship, first of two, and they're sitting pretty. And usually when we're talking about a trade that happened that year, it makes a difference for that team. And we're talking, okay, we're looking back. Hey, what was there a trade that happened? Was there an acquisition that made this 2014 championship possible? And, well, the assets that the Calgary Stampeders gained in this trade that happened earlier this year, those assets didn't play a part. So why is this a big deal? Well, sometimes it's not what you gain, it's what you throw away. In this case, it might have been a salary dump, depending on how much this player actually made. So it could be an addition by subtraction, so to speak. So with that, let's go to this week's trade tree. The initial trade was that the Calgary Stampeders sent Larry Taylor and a 5th-round pick in 2014 to the Montreal Alouettes. In return, the Calgary Stampeders received a 2014 5th-round pick and a 2015 3rd-round pick. All right, so make things a little bit shorter. Let's go to Montreal's side. Larry Taylor, in his second tenure in Montreal, didn't end that great. 6 games played, spent most of the year on the injured reserve, ended the season as a free agent, and didn't return. In fact, he signed on a year later with the Toronto Argonauts, and things didn't end pretty there well, and he hasn't seen CFL since. The 2015 5th-round pick, that was used to select kicker Nick Boyd from the University of Manitoba. The funny thing about this is Nick Boyd was one of many University of Manitoba alumnus that was taken in the draft that year. The not so funny thing is Nick Boyd was the only University of Manitoba player that did not make it to the regular season roster. Sure, he hung out in the practice roster, but because of the emergence of Boris Beatty, he didn't see it off the 2014 season and hasn't seen the CFL season since. Speaking of Boris Beatty, he was traded eventually for the guy that I'm just going to talk about momentarily, and with that being said, there's a terrible segue for a trade tree. Let's go to the other side. 2014, the 5th-round pick that Calgary selected was Tyler Crapigna. Yeah, Tyler Crapigna. And it still boggles the mind because the Calgary Stampeders had probably one of the best field goal kickers in Rene Paredes and the one best directional punters in Rob Maver. So why they needed a kicker is beyond me. There could be 2 reasons why you wouldn't want to select a kicker when you have that already. A, you want to create competition, or B, you want to create trade bait. Well, in this case, it was the latter option. And in this case, they kept what they had. They just traded the young guy, and then soon, in 2015, they traded Tyler Crapigna and a 3rd-round pick in 2016, which ended up being Eli Puka, to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in exchange for running back Jerome Messam. Before we get to Jerome Messam, Tyler Crapigna's time in Saskatchewan wasn't great and it wasn't terrible, but throughout his tenure in Saskatchewan, he'll be remembered primarily for 1 game. Don't do it, Dalts. Do it. If you show it, they'll hate you again. You just learned, you just finally got the appreciation of Saskatchewan Roughriders fans, so don't show it. There it is. Game 1 at New Mosaic Stadium. Saskatchewan Roughriders have a chance to take the lead at double overtime against the Prairie rivals, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and this happens.
33 yards out to give Saskatchewan the lead. And Gravinia, the upright, it's a dead ball. And now it's in the hands of Michael O'Shea and the Bombers.
Peg actually moves the ball 10 yards, score the winning field goal, and continue their domination of New Mosaic Stadium, including playoff games. But I digress. The Calgary Stampeders in return got Jerome Messam, and while his career kind of started off slow, his time in Saskatchewan kind of rejuvenated that. And in Calgary, he became the CFL's equivalent of the big bust in the NFL, Jerome Bettis. Unstoppable. In 2016, he won the rushing title by more than 200 yards. It wasn't even close. In 2017, he dropped down to third, but he didn't play the final game, and he was only behind number 1 by 20 yards. In 2018, he signed on as a free agent with the Saskatchewan Roughriders. Only played a matter of games before off-field issues became an issue, and he hasn't seen the CFL season since, and probably rightfully so at that point. 2015 third-round pick was used to select defensive back Tavon Campbell. Now, because John Hufnagel didn't like to rush his Canadian draft picks and his recruits sometimes, it's not unheard of to the fact that they had limited opportunities, and in 2015 he only played 6 games. Not good enough to become a reliable starter, but it was good enough for him to become on the radar of Chris Jones. In 2016, Tavon Campbell was sent to the Saskatchewan Roughriders in exchange for a 2017 third-round pick. Now, we know we're not going to dive into this, but we do know that Tavon Campbell was in on the Vernon Adams trade, which brought Vernon Adams to Saskatchewan, which in turn got Vernon Adams traded to Hamilton in exchange for Charleston Hughes, in part of that three-way trade that we talked about, the trials and tribulations of Vernon Adams. So, in retrospect, the Calgary Stampeders trading Larry Taylor in 2014 led to Saskatchewan acquiring Charleston Hughes. So, Saskatchewan owes John Hufnagel back in 2014 a big thank you. Big thank you. All right. The 2017 third-round pick, well, that was used to select running back out of Simon Fraser, Ante Milinovich leader. Now, the guy with the golden flow, that's what I know him at, but what Calgary Stampeders know him as Mr. Reliable. In 2018, didn't get a lot of opportunities. In 2019, everybody got hurt, so everybody got opportunities, and including Mr. Leader. Just over 90 touches in 2019, including on the ground. He maintained an average of 4.2 yards per carry. That's not great. That's not going to give you most outstanding Canadian, but in the Calgary Stampeders offense, pretty darn good. With Mr. Second Down conversion and a very good Bo Levi Mitchell, yeah, chances are you're really not going to miss out. You're not going to go 2 and out very often. So, with that being said, it's a good start for Mr. Ante Milinovich leader. And that's the end of that branch, and that's the end of the trade tree. So with that, the Calgary Stampeders have maintained their dominance in the non-important running back position, and they're not the only ones. You'll look at what Winnipeg's done. Andrew Harris, who might be a penny free agent, Johnny Augustine, whatever they do with Nick Dembski, Malik Irons in Hamilton, Sean Thomas Erlington in Hamilton, and of course Anthony Coombs in Ottawa. And let's not forget the best running back name in CFL history in Ryder Stone. Now that might change because of William Stanback returning, but I still like me a lot of Ryder Stone. He's going to have a heck of a future in the CFL. And we can all enjoy this if we just wash our hands. Yeah, 2021 is possible. Just be hygienic. Well, that'll do it for this week's Trade Tree. If you thought I missed something part of this one, hit the comments below. If you really liked what you saw and you have any future suggestions, hit subscribe. We got a lot of content coming out. If you have any future Trade Tree suggestions, hit me up on Twitter at Rouge Dalts. My podcast can be reached at Rouge Radio. And of course, this video is powered by the Canadian Football Podcast Network. Follow that CF Pod Network on Twitter.